Hello. Hope you're out there, because we're in here. Saturday streaming. Hi, Chloe.
Hey there.
Nice to see you. Where you been all day?
Oh, sorry. Had a couple of things to do.
Oh, did you? Anything I need to know about?
No.
Good. Yeah. Okay.
We're here. We're ready.
Saturday streaming, and it's Henry Lawson night. Yesterday was Henry's birthday. We would have been wishing Henry a 155th birthday. He's looking pretty good, actually, considering. And it's also a really important year. This year on the 2nd of September, we'll be commemorating the 100th anniversary of the passing of the great man. So Henry's been top of mind lately. Henry Lawson is our Henry. We live here in the Tablelands in New South Wales, and this is Henry's home country too. And before we start, Henry and Chloe and I are all particularly lucky to call Wiradjuri land home. So this is Wiradjuri country. If our little village is Spring Grove, Millthorpe here. So you've got Orange just down up the road in Blaney in the high country. Not lovely and warm today, sun shining and
Glorious.
T-shirt weather outside. And we've had a lovely day. Even had a visit from an old mate. Jason Neville called in to say good day. What a pleasure that was. So that's why we're smiling. We're happy, and we're happy because we're thinking about Henry. But yeah, very pleased to call Wiradjuri land home. Every day we like to stop and think about that just for a little bit. Always was, always will be Wiradjuri land, and we're just the jolly come-latelys, the new chums. But very pleased. I could live anywhere in the world, but I'd rather live here. This'll do. I don't know where you are tuning in from. Say g'day if you're out there, which reminds me, I sort of can do the tech stuff and have a look and see if anyone is saying g'day.
See if anyone's there. Add a link.
Jackie, hello. Gosh, long time no see, hey? Are you at home? Yeah? It's probably a bit warmer up there for you than it is for us, but very nice to see. Well, I say see you. We can't see you, but you know what I mean.
To know you're there.
Look, so we sing a lot of Henry Lawson. We said a lot of Henry Lawson to music, and so through the Saturday streamings this year, we've done a few here and there. So what we thought we'd do tonight, as we get towards the end of this Saturday streaming season, is sing the ones and say the ones we haven't said this year. So there's not a lot of repetition, and just to kind of mix it up a bit. And we're going to start tonight with the very first piece of Henry Lawson that we ever set to music. And it was all about home. Mm. We'd just moved back out of Sydney, or for me, back out to this country, and for Chloe, first time, back out on a little farm outside of Bathurst. And we were feeling, we'd already started singing and saying a bit of Henry Lawson in amongst our wild, monstrous psychedelic rock and roll work and all the other crazy things. Henry was always hanging around. He always was, always will. And just loved him since I was a kid, you know. He's just always the great man for me. So when we went to set Henry Lawson to music, why? Did we just think
we come across Chris?
No. We didn't know anything about folkies at all, Chloe. All we knew was that we liked Henry Lawson.
Must have just been reading it and came across it, I think.
Anyway, we weren't very ambitious. We picked one of his very early pieces and one of his shorter pieces.
Shortest one we could find.
Yes, that's right. And a romantic piece too. I guess, those were the days, and they still are. A romantic time. So a piece of Henry's from 1888. So he's just a young fella. Henry was born in 1967.
So he's 21.
Yeah, 21. And we'll do a few from that year, actually, tonight, come to think of it. So we've got a song we set to music called Shearer's Song, and a tune on the end that we wrote called Jumble Springs. And my sister and her husband had just got married and moved onto a property. They're wheat and sheep farmers from out in the marginal country.
thinking of it.
Maybe it was.
Maybe we'd been out to Kirrawar and places.
Yeah. Anyway, the property they'd moved on just outside of Tottenham, which is a place I knew a lot as a kid, and they moved on to a place called Jumble Springs. So we got Shearer's song, and then we wrote a tune called Jumble Springs. And on the end of that, we play a tune we learnt from Jacko Kevins up at Home Rule. Jacko was visiting Bobby Campbell, and so were we, and he taught us this tune called it's a version of Home Sweet Home, but played as a mazurka, which we really liked. And of course, Home Rule is Henry Lawson country, so it's all about home. This first set. Nice to see you. I'm not sure who else is joining in here. Oh, hello, Greg. It's nice to have your company, mate. Naomi, hello. Mark. Handsome young strangers. Handsome lot you are too. Nice to see you. Hi, Sandy. Special extra treat tonight. If you haven't caught up from my Facebook post, we've got Megan coming in a little bit later to do a couple of poems too. But just to start off with a little song and the first ever piece of Henry, We Set to Music.
The shearing is done, the wages are paid, and the sprees have begun. But never a shanty nor sign of my check, for far down the Murray my Annie expects a heart that is faithful, a head that is clear, and sufficient provisions to last for a year.
Home Sweet Home mazurka. So there's a fair bit about home tonight. Henry was sent off to Burke just a little bit after that. Long story short, but he'd come back from Queensland and he'd got himself into all kinds of strife up there, writing about the Shearer strikes and, you know, the foundation of the Australian Labor Party. We're starting to kind of remember who they were in some ways, to some extent at least. And but when he came back to Sydney, it was with his tail very much between his legs. He got into all kinds of trouble up there with the grog. But mostly, it turns out he thought his career in journalism for the Boomerang up there was a lifelong career, and then it all collapsed. And it doesn't sound like such a big deal in a man whose life did have some low points, but I think it hurt him a lot. And when he came back to Sydney, he fell in with the great rocks push, the careless men of the rocks, and was drinking too much. And his mate Brady and his boss Archibald, who by this stage he was writing for the Bulletin, of course, and he was in trouble. He was in trouble, there's no question. So Brady took Henry in and to Archibald. Archibald talks about him there with his, reeking of alcohol, beer fumes and tobacco juice, and really in a bad way. But I think Archibald was a little mercenary as well. He just didn't want a poet of the rocks. He wanted a poet of the bush. So the idea came up. Brady, I think, had the initial idea, but Archibald sort of funded the idea to send Henry off to Burke, and famously with a £5 note, a lot of money, I guess, and a one-way train ticket. And the idea, of course, was to get Henry something to write about. Send him in search of copy, was what Archibald said.
He was very successful, actually, in that regard. He wrote about it for the rest of his life.
Not only did he write about it for the rest of his life, but it was the foundation moment of Australian modern literature and, let's face it, character. To me, a little biased. Anyway, he fell in with the union crowd up there. He wrote for the union paper and had a great old time. It turns out he was also writing, we think, the answering argument from the right-wing newspaper in Burke under another pen name. This is only coming to light fairly recently with A Stranger in the Darling, one of my favourite books about Henry. And and it was wonderful because he could write bad poetry from the right-wing perspective, make him look like a goose, but get paid for both, of course. Anyway, the other motive was for getting Henry out of Burke was to get him off the grog, and makes Henry Lawson the only man in history to have gone to Burke to get off beer. Not going to happen. But famously, he did work in one shearing shed. We think just one. And as a dog's body at Terral. If you've ever been out to Terral, the shed's still there. Australia's first fully metal shearing shed. And the Shearer strikes that the previous year, they pushed nearly 500,000 sheep through that shed. And they'd be shearing in spring in those days. But the Shearer strikes, the year Henry was there, meant that spring shearing was pushed later and later. They shore right up to Christmas, basically to Christmas. In summer, in Burke, shearing goodness knows how many sheep a day, with the corrugated iron, just forget it. Can you imagine how hot it was in that shed? My goodness. But anyway, this poem that he wrote is one of my very favourites. If you've ever worked in a shearing shed, you'll probably find it as funny as I do. But even if you haven't, I think you'll find Henry doing his usual job of conjuring with your senses. In fact, I think he invents a few senses that were previously unknown before he actually got this poem out.
You would have been better off without, I think, in this case.
Hi, Leonie from Queensland. Hello, nice to see you. Has anyone else said g'day? Carol's wrestling with the tech. Sorry, Carol. What can we say? If you've never joined Saturday Streaming before, we're running out to Facebook as best as we can, but we've also got the good camera and the mics going for YouTube, and it's usually out by tonight or late tomorrow morning for a sort of catch up. And if you want to pay, there's all kinds of ways of paying through the website, Patreon. If you don't want to pay, settle in.
Yeah, no, just enjoy the concert.
All right. So here's Henry's poem from 1897. He's very much kind of evoking the working in that shearing shed, but he's not in the shed in this poem. He's back in town. He's ordering dinner, ordering tea in the pub. He's sitting over a glass of beer and he's having a little fun with his mate. And this is what he says. Call this hot? I beg your pardon. Hot? You don't know what it means. Or what's that, waiter? Lamb or mutton? thank you. Mine's beef and greens, bread and butter while I'm waiting. Milk? Oh, yes, a bucketful. I'm just in from West the Darling, picking up and rolling wool. Mutton stewed or chops for breakfast, dry and tasteless, boiled in fat. Oh, bread or brownie, tea or coffee, 2 hours graft in front of that. Legs of mutton, boiled for dinner, mutton, greasy, warm for tea, mutton, curried. Gave my order, it's beef and plenty greens for me. Breakfast, curried rice and mutton, till your innards sacrifice and you're sickened at the colour and the smell of curried rice. It's all day long with living mutton, bits and belly wool and fleece, blinded by the yoke of wool and shirt and trousers stiff with grease, till you long for sight of verdure, cabbage plots and water clear, and you crave for beef and butter, as a boozer craves for beer. To dusty patch in baking mulga, glaring iron heart and shed, feel and smell of rain forgotten, water scarce and feed grass dead, hot suffocating sunrise, all pervading sheepyard smell, stiff and aching green hand stretchers, slushy rings the Bullock bell, pint of tea, hunk of brownie, sinners string towards the shed, great black greasy crows round carcass, screen behind of dust cloud red. The engine whistles, go it tigers, and the agony begins, picking up for 7 devils out of Hades for my sins, picking up for 7 devils, 7 demons out of hell. They'd sell their souls to get the Belle sheep, 6 Christ they'd sell. And the day grows hot as where they come from, too damned hot for men or brutes. Roof of corrugated iron, just 6'6" above the chutes. Whiz and rattle and vibrations like an endless chain of trams. Blasphemy of 5 and 40, prickly heat and stink of rams. Baku leaves his pen door open, and the sheep come bucking out. When the rouser goes to pen them, Baku blasts the rouseabout. That's injury with insult added. Trial of our cursing powers. Cursed and cursing back enough to damn a dozen worlds like ours. Take my combs down to the grinder, will you? Have you seen my cuddle pup? There's a sheep fell down in me chute. Just jump down and pick it up. Oh, give the office when the boss comes. Catch that gory sheep, old man. Count the sheep in my pen, will you? Fetch my combs back, or when you can. When you get a chance, old fella, will you pop down to the hut, fetch me pipe? The cook will show you, and I'll let you have a cut. Shearer yells for tar and needle, ringers roaring like a bull. Whoa, away, you sons of angels, where the hell's the foundling wool? £1 a week. And station prices mustn't kick against the pricks. 7 weeks of lurid mateship, ruined soul, and £4.6. What's that, waiter? Me? Look here, waiter, to be brief, I said beef, you blood-stained villain. Beef, moo cow, roast bullock, beef. Greenhand Rouseabout. G'day, Warren. Nice to see you again. Tuning in for another dose. Oh, so nice to be in Henry's work.
I love that one. Lurid mateship.
Oh, lurid mateship. I know. No one says it like Henry. No one. It's, oh, good on you, Jackie. I'm glad it's coming on through. Great picture, great reception.
Oh,
terrific. Terrific.
That's great.
Carol says, I worked out what needed a well-aimed thwack. All good. Good work.
Channeling the Fonz there.
Oh, it's the Fonz, whacking the jukebox. That's right. Yeah. Hey, when I was a kid, I got used to that country. No matter what farm we lived on, or even if we dipped our toe into the wilds of Western Sydney, we'd go pig shooting. That was the big deal. And some great memories. Sometimes with some mates of Dad's or with Mum and Dad. One great trip I remember just with Dad. Oh man, too much fun. We went out with bow and arrow a few times after big pigs. That sorts you out, I tell you. It's more of an even sort of a competition when you just got a recurve bow and anyway, that country is. I've come to love it. We've been lucky enough more recently to go out and spend some time on the Poets' Treks from Outback, and as we get to the 100th anniversary of Henry's death, we've got some real life 3D gigs coming up, not these online ones, and we hope one of them, we'll mention some others a bit later, I guess, but one of them will be a trip back out to Burke. Some of those Poets' Treks from following Lawsons and other great writers from the Barker Darling area, up to Hungerford and across to Bree and camping on the Barwon sessions, always with a great crew. Just wonderful country. And I'll tell you,
it was amazing actually to visit that Tyrrell homestead. So the same place that Henry was shearing up at, but at the homestead, and to realise what an oasis it must have been. It had real gardens around it, and stained glass windows, and enormous central room, which I think was used for sleeping in, but also for dancing, and depending on what time of year it was, it was the sort of heart of the house, with stained glass windows around the top, and the rooms all around protecting it from the heat as well. So that was quite a place to go. It was they were just about to start renovating it when we were there.
So change the subject, but Sandy's asked a lovely leading question, asking if that was the poem that got me recited of the year at the National Folk Festival. Yes, it was. And Milton Taylor was the judge. Can you imagine how that felt? I mean, it's not so much. It's lovely to win. Of all the kind of, you don't do competitions in music. I mean, I remember band comps in the old days playing rock and roll, but poetry. They do have these competitions, like the Golden Damper at Tamworth, wonderful big show and all those. But nothing felt better than having Milton sitting there as one sole judge, a Shearer, and one of our very best. Champion man. For that poem to win, it meant, I think, more to me than even winning it myself. But that meant a lot too. Thanks, Andy. It did. Yeah, what was that poem? I love that poem. But yes, as Chloë said, what an oasis when you find water out there, and the seasons have been so wet, at the moment. But do you remember just before COVID how fiercely dry it was? Goodness,
the dust.
You just know that so many, especially going back a little way, but even now, back when people were walking that country. You can walk a long way next to a river, Not know the river's there. I mean, we've learnt over the years, don't walk during the day. Wait till the evening. Follow the insects. Follow the bees. The insects know where the water is. All the tricks, all the survival skills that we've learnt. But Henry knew that a lot didn't. A lot didn't find water.
No. It was a bit of a disaster. You were required to walk to get there, to get to the job. The jobs were far, far away through miles of scrub, and you may or may not, get lost. You may or may not find water or shelter, as the case may be. I mean, the floods were as bad as the droughts. And he had a lot of sympathy for those blokes, having seen it firsthand. And he believed, improvements should be made to the for the conditions of the workers out there. And he wrote songs like this, not just to tell a story, but I think to raise a bit of awareness too.
Henry is our Henry, not only for a lot of reasons, for his language, for his voice, but I'll speak for myself, I could tell he cared. Even as a kid, I could tell he actually cared. And it meant a lot. It meant a lot.
The old year went and the new returned in withering weeks of drought. And the cheque was spent that the shearer earned, and the sheds were all cut out. And the publican's words were short and few, and the publican's looks were black. The time had come, as the shearer knew, to carry his swag out back. For time means tucker, and it's tramp you must wear. The scrubs and plains are wide, with seldom a track that a man can trust, or a mountain peak to guide. And all day long, in the heat and dust, those men of the outside track, with stinted stomachs and blistered feet, they carry their swags out back. Never a soul to know or care if he died on the track or not. The poor of the city have friends in woe, no matter how much they lack, but only God and the swagmen know how a poor man fares out back. He begged his way on the parched Paru and the Warrego tracks once more, and he lived like a dog, as the swagmen do, till the western stations shore. But men were many and sheds were full, for work in the town was slack, and the traveller never got hands in wool, though he tramped for a year out back. Seemed dead, and the water warmed in the bag that hung from his aching arm like lead. Or in times of flood, when plains were seas and the scrubs were cold and black, he ploughed in mud to his trembling knees, and he paid for his sins out back. Oh, and dirty and careless and old he was, as his lamp of hope grew dim. He tramped for years, till the swag he bore seemed part of himself to him. As a bullock drags in the sandy ruts, he followed the dreary track, but never a thought but to reach the hearts as the sun went down above. Track for a tank he knew was a shorter cut to death. Oh, for the better the tank, it was hard and dry and crossed with many a crack. And oh, it's a terrible thing to die of thirst in the scrub outback. Many a mile, and he never reported the thing he saw, for it was not worth his while. Now the tanks are full, the grass is high, and the mulga off the track a white man lie by a smouldering swag out by. Time meets Tucker, trap they must, where the Scots and plays lie. Ah, we seldom attract that a man can trust. Oh, mountain peak to climb. And all day long, in the dust and heat, those men of the outside track with stinted stomachs and blistered feet. They carry their swags out back and all day long. Ooh, all day long. Those men of the outside track. Those men of the outside track.
Campbell Swaggy recites that piece so well. I always think of Campbell. And Greg's just mentioned Time and Tucker Duke's book. Yeah, that's where he got the name from Henry's poem. And I don't know if you know this story, but I'll tell you very quickly. Duke met Henry more than once, and they shared a home to some extent in Gulgong, of course. And I wish I could just lay my hand on it, but it's just here somewhere. Time and Tucker. We've got a couple of... There it is, behind you there, Chloe. Can you just pull it out? The red one, because the dust jacket's got a bit screwed up. There it is. Yeah, one of my favourite books in the world, and if you're looking for it, that's the dust jacket that's seen better days. 64, this version was someone Lloyd. A lovely story of Duke's, just quickly, and it'll lead into this poem and song very nicely. Duke talks about walking down the street in Gulgong, and Henry is profoundly deaf from a big earache he had as a kid. His hearing was evidently very, very good, noticeably good, until he had the the earache, which was severe, and then profoundly deaf. And I think my own little personal theory is that that's why he spoke and wrote the way we speak, because he had to listen so carefully and watch lips and really get inside the way we spoke in a different way. He said he wrote because he was deaf. You know, as someone who has to communicate but is deaf, writing becomes apparent. There's so much to say about his deafness, but there's some element of selectiveness in that deafness. And Duke talks about walking down the main street of Gulgong and sort of having basically not hearing people and not struggling to communicate with everyone, including Duke himself, as they walk down the main street. And as you know, I was back in, I don't know what year it was, but a long time ago, 1910s, probably pre-First World War, just after. And Duke said, and then just across the street and down the road, there are a couple of well-to-do members of the Gulgong community having a bit of a crack at an old swaggy who was a bit down on his luck across the road near where and Duke could barely hear what they were saying himself. But Henry heard every word and turned and stared daggers and said, you're lucky you're not there yourself, and you will be one day. He'd heard everything they said, So Duke was of the opinion that some of Henry's deafness was selective. Yeah, so make of that what you will. Oh, Jackie's giving you a nice clap for your singing.
Thanks,
there.
Jackie.
Lovely banjo too, I got to say. Hey, one of Henry's favourite songs was a song called Sweet Belle Mahone. We've got a Shearers parody of Sweet Belle Mahone. A lot of songs of loneliness and missing your love at sea became parodies in the bush. Obviously, the distances were similar. You can see why they would have resonated. So we're going to do a parody of Sweet Belle Mahone. Oh God, everyone's had their hand in this one. Yeah. We're going to use a tune that Henry would have heard many, many times. Played, I might say, on a concertina that's almost exactly the same vintage as Henry. So Henry was born in 67. Chloe's little Anglo
this is
concertina.
Supposed to be early 70s, early 1870s.
I call it yours, apparently. Actually, John Hartley's concertina. Yeah. Thank you, John. 1871 too.
Something like that. Yes, it's got the You can look up the list of concertinas. That this is an old Lochinol that was Lational. People say it a few different ways. And they actually have the old books with the numbers written down for when the concertinas were produced. These were a student machine all those many years ago, so I think they produced quite a lot of them.
Sandy's got a request for you to do a poem too, Chloe. And you know what? I reckon you might be in luck, because Chloe just happened to print one off that you'd have to read it, but I think you had it in mind.
Well, yeah, just to read, just because I liked it.
Pick your moment, but you'll do it.
Right,
you can honour that request.
It's over there in the front cover of that top book, Jason.
All right. Well, we'll do this piece first. In amongst this tune that Henry would have heard forever, the Starry Night for a Ramble, and Sweet Belle Mahone, we'll do a poem of Henry's called The Shearers. Look, Henry was writing at a time when Australia is probably one of the most progressive countries in the world. First Workers' Party, Labor Party, first Environmental Party, second to give women the vote and franchise. I don't know, you're starting to feel like that might be possible again one day. At least there's some hope that we might become world leaders again in some of those important things that just come from kindness and empathy, those simple things. But there's a couple of lines in this poem which I guess haven't aged that well. But the poem's got to be said, and I'll say it as Henry wrote it.
Yeah.
Let's get this thing sounding nice. I think this sounds pretty good. Alright, so the Starry Night for a Ramble, a Shearers parody of Sweet Belle Mahone, from all kinds of people, including Alan Musgrove, Rob Willis, the Bolch brothers, and a poem from Henry Lawson, all mashed together to give the appearance of a medley.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 1.
I will just knock that one, Chloe.
Okay.
Is it the concertina or me?
Both? No, I'm sure it's.
I can just
concertina's
compromise
tricky.
tune that one. Alright.
1, 2, 3, 2. When shearing comes, lay down your drums. Step to the boards, you spanking chums. But who will greet me when shearing's done? Sweet Belle Mahone. Soon beyond the railway bar shall the train transport me far away in the west, like a wandering star. Sweet Belle Mahone. For here I am in New South Wales, shearing sheep as big as whales, with wrinkly necks and daggy tails. Sweet Belle Mahone, lonely like a withered tree, light and life were all in thee. Oh, you are all the world to me. Sweet Belle Mahone. Shearing, 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 always jolly well shearing. Wait for me at heaven's gate. Sweet Belle Mahone.
No church bell rings them from the track. No pulpit lights their blindness. 'Tis hardship, drought and homelessness that teach those bushmen kindness. The mateship born of barren lands, of toil and thirst and danger. The camp fare for the stranger set, the first place to the stranger. They do the best they can today and take no thought of the morrow. Their way is not the old world way. They live to lend and borrow. And when shearing's done and check's gone wrong, they call it time to slither. They saddle up and say so long and ride, the Lord knows whither. And though he may be brown or black or wrong man there or right man, the mate that's honest to his mate, they call that man a white man. They tramp in mateship side by side, the Protestant and Roman. They call no biped lord or sir. They touch their hat to no man. They carry in their swags perhaps a portrait and a letter, and maybe deep down in their heart the hope of something better. Where lonely miles are long to ride and all days seem recurrent, there's lots of time to think of men they might have been and weren't. They turn their faces to the west and leave the world behind them. The drought-dried graves are seldom green, where even mates can find them. For they know too little of the world to rise to wealth or greatness. But in this book of mine, I pay my tribute to their straightness.
I wish I was upon a log, sitting like a great big frog, just waiting for a Murray cod, sweet Belle Mahone, land of snakes and cockatoos, native bears and big emus, ugly blokes and kangaroos, sweet Belle Mahone, cheerin', 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 always jolly well cheerin', wait for me at heaven's gate, sweet Belle Mahone.
Greg was just saying he's got the twin to that concertina sitting right next to him.
Oh,
eh?
really?
Yeah.
Have to get them together one day
I
and
hope
see
you're
how out of
playing
tune
along,
they are
mate.
with each other.
Yeah. Oh, I am so looking forward to the next session. Aren't you?
Yeah.
The real session,
One of these
the proper
days.
session. We get out to Dennis's tin shed one night and have a crack at it. There's so much good music. That's the best venue in the world at the moment, I think. Oh, when I'd moved around a lot as a kid and farm to farm to farm to farm. But one of my favourite, I guess it's just my age, but one of my formative times was on a farm just outside of Cullenbullen. Cullenbullen's an interesting little town, and Portland was my school. But it's probably as close as I've come to live in country that Henry Lawson would have known very, very well. It's really no different. He wrote about that country a lot, and in particular, I think with this next piece, it just evokes that whole part of the world for me in a way that few other pieces do. And then it also talks to the Bullock drivers, which Louisa used to hide the kids, when the Bullock drivers are coming through because of the language, of course. famously polite and rounded vowels, and you can't be near rounded vowels. It just doesn't know it any good. They swore like troopers. Of course they did. But really, what this piece is about to me is about. Well, I'll let you talk about it a bit. I think maybe
This one.
Yeah, I'm going to let you pick your moment for your poem too.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
Don't forget. But I think we'll sing this one at least first.
Yeah, no, let's sing this one. This one. It's a beautiful one. It's one that Mike Jackson set to music, and I've just loved this tune.
Well, you know what? I've got a dedication for this. Yeah? We first learnt this song when we joined up playing with the Wongawilli Bush Band. So we lost Reg Murray just recently. So some lovely memories of Graham. If you don't know the Wongawilli Bush Band, Graham was the lead singer until we joined and became singers as well. And it was in his voice that I hear this one. Yeah, you too?
Yeah, that's true.
It's always Graham's voice. So for Graham, because he's lost his dad, and for Reg, we can do this one. And for the beautiful, beautiful Capity Valley.
Yeah, thanks, bud.
Right.
Yeah.
That anything, what?
No.
It's all good.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm just chuckling because I've been reading it as Capity and it's not. It's Capity. There was Jason just handing me the pronunciation
used to sing Capity,
there.
Used to drive me crazy because it's not Capity, it's Capity. It's true.
We visited there on the amazing Green Davis.
Yeah.
Didn't we?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we used to go walking out there all the time with Ian and all our mates camping out there. It's just beautiful. Just beautiful country. Doesn't get any better than that anywhere in the world. Thanks for coming along tonight. Hearing a bit of Henry. As we say, it was his birthday yesterday, so happy birthday, Henry. We had a nice display of some of our, just a small handful of our Lawson books. We're a bit tragic on him, really.
Yeah. We've gone for the good-looking pictures tonight.
Yeah.
Give us and our own to look CD. At.
Recorded a few Henrys. Well, hard to find a CD of ours without Henry Lawson on it, but that's all Henry. As we've set to music, recorded with Liz French on bass. What a pleasure it was.
When the blacks used to ramble in long single file 'neath the evergreen tree, the wool teams in season came down from Canamble and journeyed for weeks on their way to the sea, with mates who have gone to the great Never Never and mates whom I've not seen for many a day. I camped on the banks of the Cudgegong River and yarned at the fire by the old Bullock tray. We rose with the dawn, were it ever so chilly, when yokes and tarpaulins were covered in frost, and toasted the bacon and boiled the black billy, while high on the campfire the branches were tossed. On flats where the air was suggestive of possums, fences and homesteads were hinted a change. We saw the faint glimmer of apple tree blossoms, and far in the distance the blue of the rain. And here in the rain there was small use in flogging the poor tortured bullocks that tugged at the load. Down to the axles the wagons were bogging, and traffic was making a marsh of the road. Then slowly we crawled by the trees that kept tally of miles that were passed on the long journey down. We saw the wild beauty of Capity Valley as slowly we rounded the base of the crown. It was hard on the beasts in the terrible pinches, where two teams of bullocks yoked to a load, tugging and slipping and moving by inches. Halfway to the summit, they clung to the road. And then when the last of the pinches was vested, you'll surely not say that a glass was a sin. The bullocks lay down neath the gum trees and rested. The bullock he steered for the bar of the inn. To the run where my sweetheart was nurse. We courted a while and agreed to get married, couple our futures for better or worse. And as my old feet grew too weary to drag on the miles of rough metal they met by the way, my eldest grew up and I gave him the wagon. He's plodding along by the bullocks today.
They just don't write them like that. And if it wasn't for Henry, that's why we thank him for what he's done. I guess, having mentioned the Illawarra a bit in passing with Wongawilli, we've got a real live gig coming down. All
1st of July at the Diggers Club for the Illawarra Folk Club. So we're celebrating Henry all over the country. Actually, we've got all over this area. We're going down to the Illawarra Folk Club on the 1st of July, and then up to the Southern Sydney Folk Club at the end of August.
Yeah, 28th of August for that one.
Yeah.
That'll be a big one because, Henry, was Sydney.
Yeah.
He died in Sydney, buried in Waverley, and I hope that Sydney turns out en masse with 5 million people. We should be able to get a million or so.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. And then later in the year, we're also going to do some Henry Lawson at Yass.
Yeah.
So we're having a festival of Henry in this household. We're just getting warmed up here, getting into the swing of it.
And if you just tuned in, these are the ones we haven't sung this year. So some of them might make the show in some way. We'll just see how we go. Now, the request from Sandy was for Chloë to do a poem. So I don't know what... didn't even read this. So
No. We've just heard how beautiful Henry's language is and how evocative he is and how he captures the character of a place and of a people. And Henry failed to matriculate from night school. He didn't finish school, but he found a much broader education. And this was published in 1897. So what's Henry? The great age of 30? And he's just had his first poems published by a publisher other than his mum. So
coincidentally,
he's just out there now.
Just coincidentally, same year he wrote Song of the Old Bullock Driver. So
there you go. How nice. So here's Henry saying, what he thinks he's doing, which are always the poems I like best. Fight through ignorance, want and care, through the griefs that crush the spirit, push your way to a fortune fair and the smiles of the world you'll merit. Long, as a boy, for the chance to learn, for the chance that fate denies you. Win degrees where the life lights burn, and scores will teach and advise you. My cultured friends, you've come too late with your bypath nicely graded. I've fought thus far on my track of fate, and I'll follow the rest, unaided. Must I be stopped by a college gate on the track of life encroaching? Be dumb to love and be dumb to hate for the lack of a college coaching? You grope for truth in a language dead in the dust 'neath tower and steeple. What know you of the tracks we tread, and what know you of our people? I must read this and that and the rest, and write as the cult expects me. I'll read the book that may please me best, and write as my heart directs me. You were quick to pick on a faulty line that I strove to put my soul in. Your eyes were keen for a dash of mine, and in the place of a semicolon. And blind to the rest. And is it for such as you I must brook restriction? I was taught too little? I learnt too much to care for a pedant's diction. Must I turn aside from my destined way for a task your Joss would find me? I come with strength of the living day and with half the world behind me. I leave you alone in your cultured halls to drivel and croak and cavil, till your voice goes further than college walls. Keep out of the tracks we travel.
Oh, go Henry. Nice choice, Chloe. Isn't that good? And how appropriate that we follow it with a song that comes from a poem that was murdered by his editors. Here's Henry's version of Andy's Gone with Cattle. Oh, good on you, Sandy, for requesting, and I'm so pleased Chloe got that in. That's just terrific.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Yeah.
Learn it, Chloe.
Learn it.
Learn it. Have it off, yeah. All right. Probably, if not Henry's most famous song, it must be close. You're another natural, Sandy says. Brilliant, Chloe.
Thanks.
Brilliant, Henry. Brilliant, Chloe. I've always wanted Chloe to recite more, but she's a reluctant starter.
Yeah. My experiences of reciting haven't been fantastic.
Only because your knees wobble.
Yeah. The rest of it.
I don't know anyone who does words better than Chloe. I'd like to hear you recite more. Yeah, I love this song.
Right, this is very, very sweet.
And after this one, we're going to take a severe left turn. Settle in, folks. But for now, here's Andy's Gone with Cattle.
Apologise for
left
my instrument.
turn.
Yes, I was just enjoying
Jason
that.
pun.
Our Andy's gone to battle now against drought the red marauder. Our Andy's gone with cattle now across the Queensland border. He's left us in dejection now. Our hearts with him are roving. It's dull on this election now since Andy went a-droving. Oh, now who now shall wear the cheerful face in times when things are slackest? And who shall whistle round the place when fortune frowns her blackest? And who shall cheek the squatter now when he comes round us snarling? His tongue is growing harder now since Andy crossed the Darling. The gates are out of order now, in storms the riders rattle. For far across the border now, our Andy's gone with cattle. Poor aunties looking thin and white, and uncles cross with worry, and poor old Blue howls all night since Andy left Macquarie. Oh, may the storms in torrents fall, and all the tanks run over, the grass grow green and tall in pathways of the drover, and may good angels send the rain on desert stretches sandy. When the summer comes again, God grant we'll bring us Andy.
I'm not even going to try to credit the tune for that because it's been so all over. Traditional, Chris Kempster and John Manifold, and so many people have had a crack at that that I lose track. Here's a poem. It's the poem that Henry wrote as a young man. He was 21 and the train was late. The train was late on Petersham Railway Station, and instead of just swearing at the train, he did a little method acting and had a little bit of a go at Western Sydney. Inner Western Sydney, I should say. My nan was inner Western Sydney and then North Shore. It is very hard these days to understand exactly how bleak and violent Sydney was at that time. Through the 1850s and 60s, of course, Australia was one of the most, if not the most, multicultural country in the world. But just like the rest of the world, it got re-Britishised in the Victorian era, and that's when everything became so British again, you know. Even in England, some of the people who were English talk about all of a sudden there was this thing called Britain created, and it was a work in so many ways of revisionism and, in fact, invention. And it did nothing but drive poverty in the inner west and the rocks, famously the rocks, the razor gangs. Sydney, by most measures, was amongst the most violent countries in the world. It is very hard for us to understand that now, when we live, thankfully, in a very peaceful place. Because other countries in the world are struggling with the opposite, of course. And my nan talked about being a depression kid. It doesn't sound like much, you know, as a grown-up, but as a kid, it really had an impact on me. We didn't have much money, but like now, people without money still have food, admittedly bad food, and we still have clothes. And but this was a time when Nan talked about getting her first pair of socks when she was 8, and as a kid, that really had an impact on me. It made me realise that poverty meant a different thing back then. And we've gone through a savage 10 years where inequality, by a lot of measures, we're doing so well, but inequality has really stretched out. And I do a lot of work with kids around the campfire every year. For 25 years now, I just marked the 25th anniversary, and I see all the kinds of schools, from the very top, the posh end of town, through all the different various private schools, and boy, hasn't that spread out. You know, like all the different shades of Christian schools, and I get the Islamic schools, and I get just everything you can imagine. But I get schools that come from pockets of Australia that if you've not been exposed to the kind of generational poverty I'm talking about, it's shocking, it's frightening, and it really is there, and it's in this tiny little pocket. Sometimes I'm amazed because I'll get a school from a tiny little area that is next to affluence, just in a suburb next door. I'll get the school and it's all bright and rosy. Believe me, it's very easy to tell, and it doesn't just express itself in turning up in shorts at -5 degrees in winter or whatever. It expresses itself in physical deformity in the children. And you know where it's come from. It expresses itself in behavioural problems that are almost beyond belief. And I love doing those groups. And we never fail. We always have a good night. But I'd like to think that perhaps we may be doing a little bit better to have a safety net that helps those little pockets of Australia that aren't doing very well. So before we introduce Megan to come and do some work, we're going to give you Henry's little bit of method acting from Petersham Railway Station when he was 21. He wrote this in 1888, and didn't he see Sydney? They lie, the men who tell us, for reasons of their own, that want is here a stranger, and that misery is unknown. For where the nearest suburb and the city proper meet, my windowsill is level with the faces in the street, drifting past to the beat of weary feet, while I sorrow for the owners of those faces in the street. And cause I have to sorrow in a land so young and fair, to see upon those faces stamped the marks of want and care. I look in vain for traces of the fresh and fair and sweet, in sallow, sunken faces that are drifting through the street, drifting on to the scrape of restless feet. I can sorrow for the owners of the faces in the street. In hours before the dawning dims the starlight in the sky, the wan and weary faces first begin to trickle by, increasing as the moments hurry on with morning feet, till like a flooded river flow the faces in the street, flowing into the beat of hurried feet. I sorrow for the owners of those faces in the street. The human river dwindles when 'tis past the hour of 8. Its waves go flowing faster in the fear of being late, but slowly drag the moments, whilst beneath the dust and heat the city grinds the owners of the faces in the street, grinding body, grinding soul, yielding scarce enough to eat. I sorrow for the owners of the faces in the street. And then the only faces till the sun is sinking down are those of outside toilers and the idlers of the town. Save here and there a face that seems a stranger in the street, tells of the city's unemployed upon his weary beat, drifting round to the tread of listless feet. So my heart aches for the owner of that sad face in the street. And when the hours on lagging feet have slowly dragged away, and sickly yellow gaslights rise to mock the going day, then, flowing past my window like a tide in its retreat, again I see the pallid stream of faces in the street ebbing out to the drag of tired feet. Oh, my heart is aching dumbly for the faces in the street. And now, all blurred and smirched with vice, the day's sad pages end. For while the short, large hours towards the long, small hours trend, with smiles that mock the wearer and words that half entreat, Delilah pleads for custom at the corner of the street, sinking down, a battered wreck by tempest beat. A dreadful, thankless trade is hers, that woman of the street. But to dreader things than these our fair young city comes, for in its heart are growing thick the filthy dens and slums, where human forms shall rot away in sties for swine unmeet, and ghostly faces shall be seen, unfit for any street, rotting out for lack of air and meat, in dens of vice and horror that are hidden from the street. I wonder, would the apathy of wealthy men endure, were all their windows level with the faces of the poor? Ah, Mammon's slaves, your knees shall knock, your hearts in terror beat, when God demands a reason for the sorrows of the street, the wrong things and the bad things, and the sad things that we meet in filthy lane and alley and cruel, heartless street. I left that dreadful corner where the steps are never still, and sought another window overlooking gorge and hill. But when the night came, dreary, with the driving rain and sleet, they haunted me, the shadows of those faces in the street, flitting by with noiseless feet, and with cheeks but little paler than the real ones in the street. Oh, once I cried, "Oh God Almighty, if thy might doth still endure, now show me in a vision for the wrongs of earth a cure." And lo, with shops all shuttered, I beheld a city street, and in the warning distance heard the tramp of many feet coming near to a drum's dull, distant beat. And soon I saw the army that was marching down the street, and then like a swollen river that has broken bank and wall, the human flood came pouring with the red flags over all, and kindled eyes all blazing bright with revolution's heat, and flashing swords reflecting rigid faces in the street, pouring on to a drum's loud threatening beat, and the war hymns and the cheering of the people in the street. And so it must be, while the world goes rolling round its course, the warning pen shall write in vain, the warning voice grow hoarse. But not until a city feels red revolution's feet shall its sad people miss awhile the terrors of the street, the dreadful, everlasting strife for scarcely clothes and meat. In that pent track of living death, the city's cruel street. I wonder if his train come somewhere in the middle there, or if he actually skipped that one.
I'm sure he didn't notice.
Waited for another. Hey, I'm going to go and dig up Digger and see if she's ready.
All right.
Talk to the people, buddy.
Talk to the people. We've got a couple about Henry's family, Henry's little girl, Bertha, who was obviously the light of his life, and a kindred spirit, a kindred soul. We'll start with Megan's mom.
Let you go. Yep. Little finagling there. I remember I learned this one because it was quite a while that I did learn it. It was pretty much the only poem in the Henry Lawson book that I felt like I could do because I was about 11. I was very small, and it was quite hard to find a poem that wasn't either too depressing for someone that small to be reading out, or too romantic for someone that small to be reading out without going, "Nah." So, this was the one I found. I remember reading it, and 3 verses in, I think, my brain just went, "Oh, it's like babysitting Joanna." And then I had it down. When Bertha comes to tea, the kettle sings in glee. The cups and saucers clatter as they hear her chatter, and you wonder what's the matter when Bertha comes to tea. When Bertha comes to tea, her age, I think, is 3. She keeps you in a flutter, cutting cake and bread and butter. Oh, where does it go, you mutter, when Bertha comes to tea. When Bertha comes to tea, she isn't shy, not she. The house cat sees quite clearly that she loves him very dearly, but he's suffocated, nearly, when Bertha comes to tea. When Bertha comes to tea, along with you and me, she's sure to bring her dolly. Then away with melancholy, and let us all be jolly when Bertha comes to tea.
Hey. Thanks, Steve. All right, we're going to follow that one up with another one just called Bertha. This one was written in 1902. It has the most beautiful tune from Chris Kempster. I love hearing the things that Bertha says about her father. She says he was a far more powerful personality than any sentimental dreaming could make of him, which I love. I don't know if everybody thinks of what Henry might have been like in the room, or might have been like to live with. I love that.
How did Megan go? Sorry I had to
She's
duck
good.
away. I just had to pop a... So I get a bit of a head pain thing and it just hit me a little bit, but I've sorted that out. Well, you know, the little pill will kick in. Yeah, here's to modern medicine. I don't know what I would have done in Henry's day with trigeminal neuralgia. Struggled more than Henry did with his various pains and ailments. When Bertha Comes to Tea is what I heard. Yeah,
that was beautiful.
Oh, it's a lovely poem.
As always.
Yeah. And Megan's coming back with another one.
Yeah, we've got another one from Megan shortly. Is that going to be next?
Yeah.
Right.
I think so, yeah. That would suit me, I think, and suit the show. So if you're just tuning in, we're doing all the other Henry ones tonight. So the ones that a couple might make the live shows that are coming up where we're commemorating the 100th anniversary of Henry's death. It's one of those things, you know, it's like when he turned 150, I thought Australia would go mad in kind of commemorating the same way they did for banjo. I don't know, Henry's kind of inconvenient, you know. You know what I mean.
think so still?
Yeah, I still think, well...
Less than he was.
Less than he was a month ago? Can I say that?
Yes.
Yeah, nothing more symbolic. Well, firstly, how ironic it was to put Henry on a $10 note in the first place for a man who struggled for a quid his whole life, and obviously...
Well, it was a $10 note, not a $100.
Oh, I know. Well, it wasn't a $100 note in those days. But nothing more symbolic in this country than when they took Henry off the $10 note and put banjo on. I love Banjo Patterson, but he's no Henry Lawson.
White solemn eyes that question me, we hand that pats my head, where only two have stroked before, and both of them are dead. Ah, poor daddy mine, she says, with wondrous sympathy. Ah, baby girl, you don't know how you break the heart in me. Let friends and kinsfolk work their worst. Let all say what they will. Your baby arms go round my neck. I'm your own daddy still. And you kiss me and I kiss you. Fresh kisses, frank and free. Ah, baby girl, you don't know how you break the heart in me. When I was good, I dreamed that when the snow shone in my hair, a household angel in her teens would flit about my chair to comfort me as I grew old. used to be. Ah, baby girl, you don't know how you help the heart in me.
Chris Kempster's beautiful tune for Bertha. It's really, we should never ever play a night of Henry Lawson without mentioning Chris Kempster's name, and if you did already, thank you. But when we first started writing, when we started with Shearer's song and got introduced to Chris Kempster, we realised that book and the work that Chris had done was just second to none. He turned Henry Lawson from Australia's greatest story writer and poet and our great literary genius into also our best songwriter by writing the best tunes, famously Reedy River, but then on and on and on and on. He wrote that tune back in '84, but he wrote some of the best tunes when he was a teenager in the '40s. You know, Reedy River became excuse me. Finish that thought, Chloe.
Yeah. Have a sip.
Thank you. I got some coffee.
But he also inspired many around him, I think, to take up the banner as well and to set tunes to Henry. And then he gathered the book together, and that inspired more people to write tunes. Anyway, that is particularly beautiful. That's just undeniable, that one. I'd just like to read you this little bit, though, because Henry's faith in Bertha, I think, was justified. I think she loved him and she understood him. This was from Bertha's unpublished notes. I can love him because he stands above us all, because his fun and friendship, his troubled, tragic spirit, his rugged ways, the vision that he never lost, the hopes that were broken, his kindness and despair, his heart and soul poured out, everything he thought and everything he wrote for our great heritage were as much a part of him as his drinking, and I'm like him, and I understand, which I think is wonderful.
It is. We get Megan back in? Oh, terrific. Come on in, Digger. So, yeah, we're doing the kind of side roads tonight, I guess is what we're saying. And when we get to the Illawarra and these various real live gigs...
It's terrifying.
Oh, no. Well, yeah. It is if it is. What do you got for us, Diggs?
If I can't see them, they can't see me, Dad.
See that round thing there? Meg, what are you going to do? 1905, so we're talking Henry's... Some people have this opinion that Henry Lawson wrote his best work in the 19th century, and I don't agree with that. He wrote great work then, but this one, but we're going to give a couple of examples as we wind the show down where I reckon he had his best work ahead of him, but what do you got?
What's
Two
that
poets?
thing you always say about how you need to keep your old stuff because, you know, even if you get better, you'll never write like that again.
That's the one.
You know?
That's the one.
It changed, I think, more than got better or got worse.
I mean, it's like the Beatles, you know. Are you going to take Abbey Road or Please Please Me? Well, I'm going to choose both, thanks.
Yeah. Two poets were born where the skies were fair to live in the land hereafter, and one was a singer of sorrow and care, and one was a bard of laughter. With simple measure and simple word the feelings of mankind voicing, and light hearts listened and sad hearts heard, and they went on their way rejoicing. The glad rejoiced that the world was gay, who took no thought of the morrow, and it ever has lightened the sad heart's way to hear of another's sorrow. The poets died while none were aware, for none could see the token, that light was the heart of the bard of care, and the heart of the other was broken.
Oh, which artist out there does not understand that poem? Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, gosh, man, it's such great insight and eloquence. We're going to a little medley of pieces now, but I'll just do a quick plug, I guess, for the whole Saturday streaming idea. Gigs are coming back, but not really. They're we're getting performance opportunities, and people are making all kinds of efforts to pay for those, but really this online work is still what's keeping us afloat. So if you do feel like contributing, we really appreciate it. We like to think that you don't have, well, we know you don't have to. You just come along. We don't ticket these things. but some people are very generously helping out. And there's 3 real main ways you can help out if you'd like to. There's just on our website. Did I put the link in? I might be really foolish and I've forgotten. But I can do it again. Our website has just a donate button. And, you can donate anything you like, anytime you like.
Yep. Or you can go to the shop and download something or buy a CD. We do still have plenty of CDs that we'd love to post you.
Yeah. Or downloads. You can pay what you like for downloads. So we thought we were making them really affordable so people would buy the music. And some people have taken that opportunity, but other people have sort of said, oh, that's a good way to donate, and have put in quite a lot of money, some people, which is really helping out. And the third thing, took us a while to get there, but we're doing it now, is we have a Patreon thing. What do you call it?
It's a Patreon.
A thing. It's a Patreon.
It's a Patreon.
Yeah. Well, but it's a subscription thing. So you can pay a couple of bucks a month, or some people go right up to quite a lot of money a month. And the idea is, I guess, I made a little video to... Sandy Holmes is saying account. Yeah, direct deposits can work too. If all of these things are no good, just let us know, and we can certainly do that.
We can organise that.
We can organise that for sure. But the Patreon's cool. I mean, I was a reluctant starter, but it's been very, very rewarding to have people out there saying, you know what, this is worth supporting. We love doing the work we do, and
real old style patrons. It's great.
It is, yeah, it is a bit, isn't it? Well, it's a lot
So,
like
they're
that.
saying keep making music, which is great.
And,
we will.
And we are.
Yeah. All right, but now a song that has changed how it feels to perform almost entirely.
Okay. Sandy's, see, I'm getting all befuddled here. What?
You would call it a Patreon account.
Sandy's just giving me words, you see, which is very helpful, Sandy. Thank you. It's a Patreon account, and it is really helpful and rewarding. So we've got a song, a poem and a song. A poem from 1901, Federation. Lawson's in England, trying to make it a kind of wider career as a writer, and with some success, but I think he found the whole class system very hard to deal with in England. And his poor wife, Bertha, was she's insane. Lawson had his mental problems, but Bertha by this stage was actually institutionalised. And I'm not even going to try and untangle the mess of what caused and generated that, and in that relationship, I think Lawson. Anyway, it was a bad situation, and it got worse. But Henry had been fighting for Federation for so long with his mates, and then yet he's 10,000 miles away from his beloved wattle, from our home here in the Tablelands, and how it must have felt to know it was happening. And in the days before, the interweb and all that sort of thing, just communications alone would have been hard to... What is actually going on,
Yeah, no, when you're away, you're really away. So if you ran into someone who'd come from Australia more recently than you, that would be a real bonus. You would get some news. You'd hear what was going on. And,
go straight from that into a song.
Yes, we'll go straight from that. We've got 2 contrasting items actually here. In the one, Henry is feeling hopeful, feeling inspired that maybe the political landscape has improved. And the second song is called Take It Fighting, and it's a very simple set of words. And I think if you just played this song for someone, I don't know that they would pick it as Lawson necessarily. But we took to it.
We sure did. All right, Jack Cornstalk. I met with Jack Cornstalk today. No, so we start again, because I was distracted because I wanted to say this tune is really straight out of the guts of Lawson country. So just for him.
Joey Oakes tune from Safala.
I met Jack Cornstalk in London today. He smiled and cooed from over the way. Oh, the solemn-faced Londoner stared with surprise at his hair and his height as compared with his size. for his trousers were short and his collar was low, and there's no room to cooee in London. I know. But I said to him, Jack, as he gripped my hand fast, I hear that our country's a nation at last. I hear they have launched a new ship of the state with men at the wheel who are steering it straight. I hear 'twas the vote of your bushmates and you. Oh, tell me, Jack Cornstalk, if this can be true. I hear that the bitter black strike times are o'er, that Grabbit and Co shall cost labour no more, that Australians are first where Australia was last, and the day of the fortune adventurers is past. And that all things are coming, we fought for so long. Oh, tell me, Jack Cornstalk, if this can be wrong. For a moment he dropped the old grin that he wore. He'd a light in his eyes that was not there before. He reached for my hand, which I gave nothing loath, and replied in 2 words, and those words were, my oath. They're standing up grand, Toby Barton and C, and Australia's all right. You can take it from me.
At all, take it fighting. When you're driven to the wall, take it fighting. There are things that we delight in, for the wrong and or the right in, but the fool you cannot frighten, who you cannot bluff nor frighten. He is king of all, take it fighting. And when you're down and out and utter, take it fighting. When they put you in the gutter, you take it fighting. There are things that we delight in, for the wrong and other right in, but the fool you cannot frighten, who you cannot bluff nor frighten. He is king of all, you take it fighting.
That's Henry's work, and you can see that by this stage in his life that he has felt let down by a succession of situations. Firstly, his bush people, he felt let down by. He felt let down by, early on, there was the feeling of church, I guess, which was always a little hit and miss with Henry, like all of us. And then more structured unionism was his saviour, but then he hit the realities of that in the shed at Tyrrell and felt that was also problematic and let down. Love and the brokenheartedness and the mental illnesses coming in, and he's feeling let down by those situations. Federation was exciting, but then he came home and the whole place seemed to collapse in this kind of post-Victorian morass. Is that the word?
It's a good word.
Yeah. So he, like his fellow poet Banjo, was in favour of the Great War. Now that's a generalisation, but they're on record as saying so. The difference was Henry saw the grief coming too. By the way, all through all that, Henry was more aware than anyone that it was he himself who was letting the situation down. It's not to say that he's some sort of victim here, although to some extent I guess they all were. The irony here is that as Henry was in favour of the war, he was about to enter into, from what I understand, a relatively less known part of Henry's life, but possibly his happiest. His old mate, who he hadn't seen for many, many years, Jim Gordon, the bloke he tramped from Bertha to Hungerford and back with, reappeared in Henry's life. And Henry was given what amounted to sort of like a government job to go out to the dry area, the Riverina, to the irrigation there that was meant to be, and indeed turned out to be, the great boon of farming, and they were trying to get Henry to attract people to come and live there, to immigrate to the Riverina, and to move to the Riverina and build places like Leeton and Griffith. Now,
I think Henry moved to Yanco, didn't he? Is that right?
Yeah, Yanco, which as an old Red Band rugby league player, Yanco was sworn enemies. They were our sworn enemy. That was the great rivalry. Well, no, the vicious rivalry was in those days anyway, was between Red Ben's rugby league team and the Forbes High School rugby league team. Look out. Look out. I quit football around about that time. I was a hooker and the opposition props grew beards. Just too big for me, you know. But that's another story. One of the things was that Archibald again and then the Bulletin, they all got Henry out to the Riverina because it was a dry area. There was no grog. There's a famous story about Henry heading off on the train. They think they finally got Henry off the grog and out to do his job in the Riverina with the seemingly saintly Mrs. Byers as his company looking after him. And Henry kind of leaning out the train window as it pulled out of Sydney with 2 big bottles of whiskey pulled out of his coat pockets, like laughing at what they... He was never ever going to stay off the grog. But he was less on the grog and out carrying his swag. Jim Gordon was a great bushman. And when Jim Gordon says Henry Lawson was a great bushman, he knew what he was talking about. In particular, his, what I sort of think of socialism in the room, just always stayed. Jim said, you'd never wake up cold when you went out camping or fishing with your swag or walking on the track, because you'd wake up in the morning and Henry had thrown his blanket on you. Cry. Anyway, Henry was great in that situation. He was a good mate. I mean, it might be a bit old hackneyed, it may be a myth, but it's the kind of myth we might be able to... I'd like to think we're kind of aspirational towards, if we can't accept that Australia was an incredibly progressive place for its time. I'm very quick to acknowledge and feel the savagery of the treatment of the Aboriginal people in those days, and we would all like to think that the gender issue was better and so forth, but compared to the rest of the world, we had it going on. And Henry exemplified that in so many ways. I mean, they duck over out there. He was out there writing. He did write. He wrote, attracted people into the Riverina, built up the irrigation farming out there. they'd duck over to the big drinking Irish town in Narandra and get on the grog, of course. He wasn't off the grog, but he was having a good time. Trying to enlist for the First World War as well, but, you know, why wouldn't they take him? Let me count the ways. Too old, broken, drunk, mentally ill, what would you name it?
It's not quite what we're looking for.
Even as the casualties of the First World War grew, the Great War grew, to the point where, you know, basically if you could stand up, you could go. What was the youngest fella we found?
14.
Yeah, James Martin from Hawthorne in Victoria. Yeah. He died of enteric fever at Gallipoli, and he was 14. So, but they wouldn't take Henry. So Henry spent the war out there at the Riverina going, and when he wanted a drink, he would he'd get over the border. But he wrote this piece in 1915, and it tunes Cathy O'Sullivan's. Yeah, so Henry's war was a strangely happy and joyous affair. He and Jim were really good mates. The other thing, I guess, while the tune just mentioned, Henry loved kids his whole life, and kids loved him. Famous stories of him in Sydney in the rocks, you know. Everything else is going to hell, but yet the kids, the poor kids especially, "Hey, Mr. Lawson, how's things, Mr. Lawson?" He'd stop and he'd chat, and, you know. And Jim Gordon's kids were favourites of Henry, you know. The people who knew him talked about him like a sort of a Peter Pan, like forever young, in a way. And I think I sometimes resemble that remark, but anyway.
Did you hear the children singing? All my brothers, all my sisters. Did you hear the children singing as our troops went marching past in the sunshine and the rain, as they'll never sing again? Hear the little schoolgirls singing as our troops went swinging past. Did you hear the children singing? All my brothers, all my sisters. Did you hear the children singing for the first man and the last, as they marched away and vanished to a tune we thought was banished? Did you hear the children singing for the future and the past? Shall you hear the children singing? Oh, my brothers, oh, my sisters. Shall you hear the children singing in the sunshine or the rain? There'll be sobs beneath the ringing of the cheers, and neath the singing there'll be tears of orphan children when our boys come back again. There'll be tears of orphan children.
That's 1915, and Henry was that remarkable prescience that he carried his whole life. By 1917 he wrote this, and by this stage he was and had spent some time out in that area around the Riverina. And I'm sure that not only Narandra saw his drinking ventures, but Gundagai as well. And I was talking earlier when Megan came in about this idea that Henry wrote his best poetry or his best work in the 19th century, or most of his best work was behind him by the time he went to England, all this sort of idea. If you ever want to sort of exhibit A for the evidence that wasn't the case, and here it is. Leonie, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thanks for coming and sharing a bit of Henry with us. As I say, we feel like we're kind of taken the side roads of our love of
have a
Henry
bit, yeah.
tonight, which is really enjoyable to kind of get off the ones we normally do. But if you are looking for a real live Henry Lawson performance, you'll hear almost none of these and almost none of these stories. But that's kind of by way of an ad, in the sense that you won't get too many
Repetition,
repeats.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we'll go back to our core Henry songs. Illawarra,
Mm-hmm.
1st of July.
Yep.
Sydney, 28th of August. Middle of September for Yass. Look out for the Turning Wave Festival. It's a beautiful festival, and post-COVID, I'm so pleased they're getting it up and running.
Okay.
So close to Yass is the town of Gundagai.
Are we going to lead into it?
Yeah. Thanks. Well, it's a long way
To Riverina, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Riverina, and the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Wagga Wagga, farewell, dear old hay. It's a long, long way to Riverina, but we'll get there someday. The boy cleared out to the city from his home at the harvest time. They were Scots of the Riverina, and to run from home was a crime. The old man burned his letters, the first and the last he burned, and he scratched his name from the Bible when the old wife's back was turned. A year went past and another. There were calls from the firing line. They heard the boy had enlisted, but the old man made no sign. His name must never be mentioned on the farm by Gundagai. They were Scots of the Riverina, with ever the kirk hard by. The boy came home on his final leave, and the township's bonfires burned. His mother's arms were about him, but the old man's back was turned. The daughters begged for pardon till the old man raised his hand. A Scot of the Riverina, who was hard to understand. The boy was killed in Flanders, where the best and the bravest die. There were tears at the Graham homestead and grief in Gundagai. But the old man ploughed at daybreak, and the old man ploughed till the murk. There were furrows of pain in the orchard, while his household went to the kirk. The hurricane lamp in the rafters, oh, it dimly and dimly burned, and the old man died at the table, while the old wife's back was turned. Face down on his bare arms folded, he sank with his wild grey hair, outspread with the open Bible, and a name rewritten there.
And we come to the end of our kind of winding way through our love of Henry Lawson with his last poem, medleyed with, I think, a finale that's fitting. 1922, he died. Both my I was young. I was young. My mum was young when she had me, so I had lots of great-grandparents and grandparents around. And I had one nan out just out the road here on the farm, Brownie. Oh gosh, if ever there was one of Lawson's bush girls, that was Brownie. And my other great nan lived in Union Street, Newtown, then above a shop in Pitt Street. And while they built the bridge, she somehow managed to get herself across to the Greenway Flats on the north side. So kind of they both lived in Sydney's homes, if you can see where I'm coming from, the bush home and the inner Sydney. And they both reckon they met Henry in both their different little stories. Not met, he was just around. He was around. And I think of Henry as the great poet of the city and the great poet of the bush, and that's quite a thing to pull off. He loved the bush. That was home. And if ever he was hard on the bush, he was hard on the city. He was hard on anything, as Chloe mentioned earlier, because they
were hard on him.
Yeah, and as Chloe said earlier, because he wanted to fix stuff.
Yeah,
right? He wanted stuff to be better than it was for the people who didn't have a voice. Everyone who comes out of working Australia knows that we don't always say what we speak between the lines, right? We metaphor is our friend. We wouldn't necessarily know that, but we don't always say exactly what we mean. And even when we do, getting a voice in the upper echelons that control the press and the media, and these days that's probably even worse. It has been difficult because even when there is a voice, it's misunderstood often. Henry made sure that we had a voice, and I thank him for it. But the main thing about Henry to remember, I think, is how much he wanted that the bush was home. And in particular, Pipe Clay, Urundary, that beautiful, beautiful little part of Australia between Mudgee and Gulgong. I reckon he would have swapped his... he was given Australia's first state funeral. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first one ever. The Premier didn't want to give him one. It was a disgrace.
The Premier was?
Yeah. Nice one. But the Prime Minister, little Billy Hughes, trying to redeem himself from him, is embarrassing himself as a toady and a schmuck, a little digger sod during the time of the First World War. What a piece of work. But anyway, he made sure that Henry Lawson was given Australia's first state funeral. And I don't know. Yeah, good. But I reckon he would have swapped it all, and certainly would have swapped plenty of those $10 notes with his mug on them. I reckon, anyway, to be buried out here at Urundra in Waverley Cemetery. Having said that, that spot there in Waverley is a very special place, and here's to you, Henry.
So we'll finish up with a couple of beauties. On the Night Train was written in that last year of Henry's life, 1922. And it was set to music by Chris Kempster, but we're going to borrow Chris's tune and adapt it a little bit. And Jason's going to recite it rather than sing it. And then we'll finish off with one you probably know. And we'd love it if you'd sing along. Jerry Hallam's Outside Track. So raise the rafters wherever you are.
Yeah. I always think of Margaret Walters, don't you, with this one? Yeah. Another one of those many, many people we learned Henry Lawson in song. They said Henry Lawson was sung in the bush before it was written. And, it's lovely to bring them all back into tune. Thanks for coming, everybody. Just wanted to check the tune first. Cool. Have you seen the bush by moonlight from the train go running by? Blackened log and stump and sapling, ghostly trees all dead and dry. Here a patch of glassy water, there a glimpse of mystic sky. Have you heard the still voice calling, yet so warm and yet so cold? I'm the mother bush that bore you. Come to me when you are old.
the mother bush that bore you. Come to me when you are old.
Did you see the bush below you sweeping darkly to the range, all unchanged and all unchanging? It's a very old and strange. And while you thought in softened anger of the things that did estrange, did you hear the bush a-calling when your heart was young and bold? I'm the mother bush that nursed you. Come to me when you were old.
Come to me when you are old. I'm the mother bush that nursed you. Come to me when you are old.
In the cutting or the tunnel, out of sight of stack or shed, did you hear the grey bush calling from the pine ridge overhead? You've seen the seas and cities, all seems cold to you, or dead. All seems done and all seems told, yet the grey light turns to gold. I'm the mother bush that loves you. Come to me now you are old.
Come to me now you are old. I'm the mother bush that loves you. Come to me when you are old.
Our tenor was there on the moonlit quay, one on the forward hatch. No straighter man to his mates than he had ever said, lend us a match. I'll be long, old man, ere our glasses click. Be long ere we grasp your hand. So we dragged him ashore for a final drink, and the whole wide world seemed grand. For they marry and go as the world rolls back. They marry and vanish and die, but their spirits shall live on the outside track, as long as the years go by.
The port lights glowed in the morning mist that flowed from the water's green, and over the railing we clasped his fist as the dark tide came between. And we cheered the captain and we cheered the crew, and our mate time's out of mind. We cheered the land he was going to, and the land he left behind. For they marry and go as the world rolls back. They marry and vanish and die, but their spirits shall live on the outside track, as long as the years go by. So we roared lang syne as a last farewell, but our hearts seemed out of joy. I well remember the hush that fell as the steamer passed the point,
Oh, we drifted home through the public cars. We were 10 times less by one, who sailed out under the morning stars and under the rising sun. For they marry and go as the world rolls back. They marry and vanish and die, but their spirits shall live on the outside track as long as the years go by.
Sailed from the wharf since then. I have said goodbye to the last I knew, the last of the careless men, and I can't but think that the times we had were the best times after all. As I turn away with a lonely glass and drink to the barroom wall, for they marry and go as the world rolls back. They marry and vanish and die, but their spirits shall live on the outside track as long as the years go by. But I'll try my luck for a check out back, then a last goodbye to the bush. For my heart's away on the outside track, on the track of the steerage push.
Thanks, Henry. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope you've enjoyed a kind of long and wild and weird, wonderful kind of ride. It's lovely. I was kind of enjoyed just ducking to the side roads from our, what I would think of as our
main road Henry.
Main road Henry. Yeah. And our main road Henry's pretty odd anyway. But you know, he is something else. And we've had some really lovely company tonight. It is not too late to chip in financially. We really do appreciate it. I don't mean to kind of turn it into some sort of big ad, but here's a big ad. Downloads through the website, just a nice donation of any kind. Any donation's a nice donation.
Yeah.
And yep, you're welcome
Subscribe
to become
the
a patron.
Patreon or come along to a gig.
Yeah, a gig,
Yes.
a gig.
Come and say good day in person.
My
That'd be
kingdom
lovely.
for a gig. Oh, have we got a kingdom?
No, but don't tell them that.
Thanks, everybody. And yeah, thanks for the nod, Dennis. Oh, goodness, mate. No, thanks for sharing some of those tunes out of the shed. We haven't been there, but I can at least feel like I have been. If you haven't caught up with Dennis's shed sessions appearing on the Mainly Folk Bunch, check that out because some of the best music being made at the moment. Anyway, cheers, everybody.